So yeah, super like easy, fluid, straight in. Obviously I know who you are, clearly, because I DM'd you and said, could we please have this conversation? And I think a lot of people listening to this will know who you are, because I think you've got a decent amount of infamy, should we say, and a very strong personal brand. But I read somewhere that you picked up a camera at 14.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would love to know is, what has your journey been from 14-year-old Drock, who wasn't Drock then, to now?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's been incredible. I wake up every day like, wow, is this really my life? At the age of 14, my oldest sister, Jen, she had a baby. Actually, at 11, she had the baby. But at the age of, she had bought like a home camera to like film the babies, like just his like growth and everything. And I would help like build a little Thomas the Tank Engine tracks around. And then I was like, wait a minute, can I use your camera like film him playing with the train? And I picked it up, and I remember like trying different angles to try to get the train to look like they were real trains, and like it was just like automatically I felt intuitive about like I knew how to like capture stuff, and I fell in love with it. I think 2 years goes by. I take the camera, I kind of steal it from her and bring it home back to Pennsylvania, and I'm running around filming my friends in the backyard, my younger sister, and then I learned how to edit. And I was like, wait a minute, that's cool. You can like move stuff around to tell a story. And I was like, that was really fascinating to me. And so, over the course of like my childhood, my teenager years, I was always like very creative, like drawing, writing, music. My mom, I was homeschooled, so my mom like really pushed me to like, what is your creative thing? What do you want to do? And then it comes to college. Like I gotta start thinking about college, and I'm like, I guess I'm good at like the video stuff. Why don't I try that? And so I went to a community college, radio, TV broadcasting. Fell in love with it, and that's kind of in the beginning part of my journey.
So you pick up a camera, you steal your sister's camera when you're 14,
Yes,
and that's
yes.
we'll go with borrow, but like
No, but yes, no, definitely. I definitely know. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna borrow this for the weekend, and then he just never got it back.
Yeah, you'll get this back when I'm 25.
Yeah, exactly.
So you borrow your sister's camera, you start realizing that this is something really fun. You discover editing. How did you discover editing? Because like when you were, I'm imagining we're a similar age, right? So back then there was no such thing as
now.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
31
so
now, so yeah.
we didn't have fucking Google it back then, right? So
we didn't have fucking
how
Google
did you
it.
how did you figure it out? How did you learn editing?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I came from a very like my family. They always made me feel like we didn't need anything, but we were like very poor, very like average family. And so anytime I wanted something for my birthday, my mom would be like, do you want that toy? Or do you want to save money so you can go buy, like, you always wanted a computer. So for years, I would save my Christmas and birthday money for years, like 4 or 5 years, just to be able to like buy my first computer. When I got my first computer, I think it was like a Windows 95 or Windows 97. Or it was like either Windows 97 or 2000. And it came with a program called Windows Movie Maker. That Windows Movie Maker editing software was free on my desktop, and I just discovered it because I had just bought my first computer, was going through like all the software, like, oh, there's Paint, oh, there's Word, oh, there's like the notes thing, and then like I found this Windows Movie Maker editor, and I just decided to like practice and learn, and just kind of figured it out on my own, and then through the years, like 2 or 3 years later, YouTube really started to have a lot more information of like how to edit. There's this guy named Final Cut. I think it was like Final Cut Pro King or Final Cut King. His name is Zach. He's actually a very influential person right now who does like a lot of like magic tricks on like Vine and Instagram and all that stuff, and I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot on how to edit because he put out videos on how to edit.
So basically self-taught, which is pretty amazing.
Essentially self-taught, yeah. By the time I got to college, I knew how to edit. They had like these editing classes, and I was like, I know what I'm doing here, and
I love that. I was exactly so college, right? So we call it university in the UK, so it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll never forget going to university to do public relations because I thought I was going to do PR. Like that was when I was like, I'm going to do PR. Like that's my dream job, whatever. And I remember getting there and being like, why the fuck am I here? Like I've learned everything that you're teaching me in this 3-year course in my internships over the summer. Like, and I felt like there was, like you said there, like you already knew what you were doing by the time you went to college. Like I felt like that 3-year degree of, getting into debt and all the things was like such a waste of time because I'd already learned
wasting time, wasting money, and also just like, I mean, I think it was cool to like meet people who are similar in the field and interest, but definitely not worth the price tag that came along with it.
I mean, you guys have it hard. Like we pay like, well, when I went to university, it was like £35,000, like $50,000, right? My equivalents now, they probably pay like $75,000, and that's for like the top tier, like Oxford, Cambridge.
And that's a year, or that's for the whole
total
education? Oh,
total.
Wow. Yeah, like my dream college, I only did 2 years. We just call it an associate's degree, but my dream college was 125 grand a year, Full Sail and New York Film Academy. It's actually really funny. I got an email the other day. The New York Film Academy, in order to apply, you now have to study Daily Vee, which I thought was super fascinating. A lot of
have you posted about that? You have to post about that.
I have posted about it. I have.
The irony.
I know, and it was a fun moment. I showed my mom. I was like, Mom, remember I wanted to go to like New York Film Academy? Well, now they gotta watch my videos that I made to get it, like to kind of like get in or understand what modern documentation looks like.
And ironically, you didn't go there and didn't want to go there because they charge so much. I love that. Yeah. You were like the walking billboard for like, don't go to college.
Well, it's funny it's funny what you said. I'm not against college, but it's definitely becoming less and less important, I would say, for creative and for entrepreneurship. I think if you're a doctor, if you're going to go be a teacher or an educator or anything like that actually needs education, then you should go to college or whatever that new version of that is. But yeah, I definitely believe that for creatives and for people like us, you and me, we need to like go and run free and experience the world a lot faster. But the issue is a lot of people when they go to college, they're forced to figure out what they want to do at a young age, and they don't quite know what they want to do. So you're paying money to figure out what you want to do. You're 3 years in, you hate it. Like that to me is just a bad financial decision.
It's so interesting that you said that because I posted something yesterday. So I'm not anti-degree, right? I have a degree.
Me neither.
But a lot of people think that I'm anti-degree because I call out a lot of bullshit about it because I do think it's a business, right? It's an industry that makes money, right?
It's an industry that makes money and has not evolved with the time. I think that's just
correct.
The part that people are missing.
I actually think a more modern take on like college or university would be like, instead of going and getting a degree over a 3-year period, which is probably 10 years out of date at least, how about you go and do 6 months, get the foundation, go work in an industry for 3 years, then go back to college for 6 months and then go work in industry for another 3 years. And it's like that constant learning thing because I don't see sensibly how how sensibly a university or a college can possibly expect to stay up to date when stuff changes so fast.
I agree. And also, like, think about kids who are studying marketing right now in college are learning about billboards and TV commercials. They're not learning about social media ads. So when they walk into the real world, we hire a lot of these young kids. They don't know anything on how to market in the proper modern day age. And it's funny. I think there's one more generation, like, in between our age and our parents. There's like that one more generation that they probably will still push their kids to go to college. But I think from our generation moving forward, we're gonna care a little bit less about our kids going to college. I think 100%. We're gonna care more about like, hey, you should go like be wild for 5 years, learn about yourself. Go work in some random bullshit jobs, but at least learn and experience and try to figure it out. I think that's just where the world is moving.
You said something a minute ago, which was that your mum used to say, hey, do you want this toy or do you want this money to go towards, that thing that you want when you were a kid? Where do you think the choice, or rather the self-awareness to make the choice of the delayed gratification of the, because for context, right, I was the kid that was like, toy. Give me the toy. So, and I don't think there are many adults even, who would choose the delayed gratification. You must have seen that experiment of like the marshmallow, right? Where like they put the marshmallow in front of the kid and they're like, you can either have one marshmallow now or you can have 10 if you wait 5 minutes. And like 90% of kids are like, now. So where do you think that comes from?
You know, it's funny that you say that. Right now, like in this closet, my girlfriend's moving in, I told you earlier before we started the show. And, you know, I gotta like start reducing all the stuff that I have. And I'm like also going through like all my clothes, and I'm gonna like really get rid of a ton of stuff and curate and be more selective and more minimalist. I went and bought new workout clothes and a new shirt. I don't have them in my actual closet yet because I'm waiting for me to figure out and purge everything and then reward myself with those new workout clothes when I'm done. And I don't know, I think it's innately always been in me of like, I don't need it right now. I'm glad I have it. I know I'm working for it, but I don't need it right now. And I think a lot, and maybe it comes from a dark place. Like maybe we just didn't have enough, and maybe I thought like, oh, if I save up, like I know what I want, but I need to like save up for that. Maybe I just was grounded in that already. I don't know. I don't know where it, but I still do it to this day. Like even like my favorite part of the meal, I'll wait till the last bite to eat my favorite bite. This is who I am as a human, I guess.
And my brother does the same thing. He eats everything else except for the steak or like the fries.
Like, my favorite part of the burger is the middle, so I'll eat all the way around the burger and save that last bite for the last. Is that like you put it in your mouth and like rotate it like Bugs Bunny? Yeah, I mean not like very beaverish, but definitely some. I've gotten a little bit classier around how I approach it, but definitely what ends up happening.
It's a good visual. I like it.
Yeah.
Amazing. The reason why I wanted to ask that question is because obviously, like in preparation for this conversation, I've listened to loads of podcasts you've done, and I've tried to do as much research as possible. And the thing that
I'm humbled, by the way.
Well, I'm humbled that you even agreed to be on it, if I'm honest. Like, I've been fangirling from afar for a very long time of stuff that you do.
Yeah, I've been trying to say yes more. Like, you know, you gotta understand, like, the first 8 years of working with Gary, I've always put Gary in front of me, only because, like, that was my job. That was, like, what I wanted to do. I never had any interest on being on podcasts. I think as time has now evolved, and I've evolved as a human, I'm curious of what it is and what it does, and obviously I know the benefits, like you being able to go back and listen to my story 5, 10, 15 times is just something, only because of like literally the last year of COVID, I started to say yes to the podcast and really start to put myself out there, you know? I think it's my time to start talking a little bit.
What was stopping you before?
You gotta understand, we hired a lot of people that came in and out of our team, and whenever somebody would come in, they would always think they want to build their personal brand and would not do the actual work that was the work. Or they would do it, but it would be like half-assed. And so I wanted to show people that you can really build a personal brand like myself while still working your face off for someone else and not making it about you, you know?
That is a really nice segue, which loops back to what I was going to ask you about this whole delayed. No, not at all. This is what, like, hey, I think I said to you, like, I don't have a list of questions. I literally have themes on my phone, and I'm like, content, personal branding, ask him about the food meal app. I have no idea what that means, but we'll get to it in a sec.
Food meal app. Okay, got you.
I know where I'm going with it, don't you worry.
Mm-hmm.
And then to ask him about sleeping on his sister's sofa in Staten Island and, like, all that. So I have themes,
we have
right?
Some things, yes.
We have some things to discuss. But I my biggest issue with most podcasts is they go, ask the question, the answer is given, and then it's like straight into the next question that's been like scripted, and it's like, where is the fluidity in that? Like, where's the conversation? Where's the connection? It's not my bag. So we'll flip-flop all over the place, but it'll be a good conversation.
Love.
I want to flip back to, though, delayed gratification. You've just said there, like, a very, very interesting point. Obviously, I run a personal branding agency, so we're on the same wave here. About people coming in and out of Team Gary Vee and being like, I want to build my personal brand. This is super exciting. Like, I'm on this train. Oh, but it's really, I have to do it every day. So let's talk about consistency. Like, you've been doing this for like what, nearly 10 years? Where do you even start? Like, your personal brand, like, I don't want to spend a huge amount of time.
Yeah, I got it.
Kind of
I
covering
have a quick story. So, you know, my job is to film and edit Gary for the last 7.5, 8 years.
And for anyone that doesn't know who Gary Vee is, Google him. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, he's an okay guy. He's a decently...
You might know him, you might not, like...
No, but, like, honestly, a lot of people don't know him, and I you know, that's the fun part about working on something for so long, is, like, you can see when we hit a new, like, stroke of, like, oh, now 14-year-olds fuck with us because of TikTok, or, hey, 65-year-olds now fuck with us because of LinkedIn. It's fun. But it's cool. Anyway, so back to the story about why I started my personal brand. I was, you know, my buddy and I were working on a podcast called the Launching Creative Podcast, where we were interviewing people and like entrepreneurs and business people, and really just trying to help creatives learn how to make money. Because you got to remember, in 2013, 2012, there's not a lot of information about freelancers on the internet. There's not a lot of resources. So we were like trying to like establish ourselves as a brand. And so like there was some personal stuff there, but I really wanted him to be the face of it. I've always been like the back face. And then, you know, I get the job at Gary, and I'm filming and editing him every single day. And, you know, he's saying, put out content. All you gotta do is just put out content. And so one day I just decided, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna like post a quote that I think is motivational. And I've always, like, if MySpace was around right now, I wish people could go back and read all my motivational quotes and stuff I would put up. I had virtues animals, I had like lions and bravery and, you know, all this stuff on my walls as a kid. This is fully actually me. And so at some point I was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna just start posting. And what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to spend time designing, I didn't want to make it polished, I didn't want to like take away from my work time. So I decided I wanted to do most of my stuff on my phone. And I wanted to show people that, you know what, you can go work your dick off, you can go work your face off, and you can go like grind on someone else's brand, but then you can still do yours while you're walking to the bathroom, or while you're in the subway, or while you're sitting on the toilet. You can still like put out something that will make a lot of impact, and that's truly why that's why my brand is what it is today, because it's not the Instagram photos, it's not the, you know, personal brand feed that you normally would see, but it's definitely more authentic to myself, and I love that.
You know, I love what you said there, which is like, it doesn't have to be polished. Because like some of my biggest posts have literally been when I've written something in the notes section of my phone, screenshotted it, and just posted it. Like there's no 100%. Finesse to it whatsoever. There's spelling mistakes. There's definitely grammatical errors.
Issues, yeah.
All the time. Like I did a tweet, I remember, and it was like one of my biggest. Like I haven't got loads of followers on Twitter. I've got like 3,500. But
listen. One thing I want to say, I like that you like flowing and stuff. 3,500 people, I always tell people, imagine yourself right now in a room where you're standing and there's 3,500 people around you. That is a lot of people. People are confused about followers and influence and community, and I think that 3,500 is a fuck ton of people. I would be nervous in front of 100 people, let alone 3,500, so...
I love that you've said that. I had this exact... I love how you've just, like, me'd me. Because I had this exact same conversation with my client the other day. He was like, oh, you know, I thought we'd be at 100,000 by now. And I was like, we're at 90. And I was like, do you know how many people, 90,000 people... I was like, you know Wembley Stadium, which is, like, a big soccer stadium here. I was like, you know Wembley Stadium? And he was like, yeah. I was like, that is the whole fucking stadium. He was like, okay, yeah, it's quite a lot of people.
Well, that's what I say about Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden is 20,000 people. That's a lot of people, and people go like work their whole lives professionally to perform in front of 20,000 people in Madison Square Garden. Like, it's a big deal, and people are confused because everything right now is about numbers and how many followers and how many things you get. Where, you know, for me, I don't want to be famous. I want to have my niche and have a community that talks to me the way I want to talk to them. Right? I want to find people that, like, want to accomplish things and have a drive and are motivated. I don't need 1 million people to do that, you know?
I want to dig into what you just said there, which I think is really interesting. I think people confuse followership with community. And actually what I'm doing and what I do for my clients is build community, because I think there's a big difference between having, because anyone can have followers. You can buy fucking followers if that's what you want. Like, it's really easy.
Yep.
But building a community takes a really long time, and it takes a lot of input, and it takes a lot of effort, and it's a two-way street. Like, you can't just talk at people and expect them to continue the conversation. And that takes a long time to cultivate, right? To go back to what you were saying earlier about, like, you know, people coming into Team Gary Vee don't want to put the hard yards in. Like, it took me 12 months of just saying stuff before anyone even gave a shit. But because I was really passionate about what I was talking about, and I knew if I consistently kept talking about personal branding, pushing that point, eventually someone would go, oh yeah, I quite like this person, I want to speak to them. And then
100%.
that would, like, flywheel.
Well, sorry, I know I'm going to derail you again, but the number one biggest
Derail me all you want.
The number one issue right now of NFT projects. Listen, you know, before I met Gary was doing wine content every single day. Every single day for 3.5 years he put out wine content. And he did, you know, that's 3.5 years of content that kind of a lot of people listen to, but not to the sheer volume. Now I'm 8 years in with Gary, and we put out 150 to 200 pieces of content a day. And so when people come to me with like, hey, I put in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I'm like, go 13. Let's see what 13 years looks like. People are such into, maybe this is why I understand Gary so much, maybe this is tying back to the beginning of the podcast. You know, a lot of people are into instant gratification. And maybe if people can learn how to hold back and, like, delay gratification a little bit, you might be able to apply a little bit more patience.
I always think of, it applies to everything in life, but I always think of personal branding like a high interest account, right? You pay in $1 one day, you're only going to have $1. You pay in $1 for 14 days, you're only going to have $14. In 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you're going to be fucking rich.
100%.
And it's like that compounding impact of just being consistent in paying in every single day. And eventually that compounds into attention, which wins trust, which wins all the things.
Yeah, and what people are not understanding is that what's so fun about content is that it's going to live on the internet forever. And when I watched one video as a kid of Will Smith, the 9 Rules of Success. Some fan made it mashup. I watched that video almost every day for years because it was the thing that I wanted to listen to. Some random kid put together that video and it changed my life. And so, you know, you never know where someone's going to pick up a piece of your content. You don't know the context it's going to be in. But someone's going to hear something at some point years later, but you made it years ago, and it's going to change their life. And I don't think people are understanding the impact that you have long term.
Which is why they don't spend time on making content.
Right, like my great grandkid might listen to this. You know.
That's so sweet.
But it's super cool. If my grandfather right now had a podcast out about him, I would find it. I would listen to it. We never had access like this before. And I
it's
think
like time capsuling.
Yeah, we are the patriarchs and matriarchs of our family. You know, everyone, you gotta think about that again. We are going to be the people for the next tens of thousands of years, if our planet lasts long enough, that people are going to point back to, like, that is the first rock of our family.
I love that.
That's first,
so nice.
I don't know your last name, but that's the first, whatever your last name is, of your family. Because your parents are not documenting themselves like you are.
I love that. Which brings me really nice to, I read somewhere that you said, time is longer than you think. And I was going to ask you what you meant by that, but I think you've just summed it up nicely. But let's dig into that a little bit, because I think it plays well into this consistency piece of, like, people give up really fast. Time is longer than you think. And, you know, I've been doing this for 3 years, right? Which is nowhere near the skin of what you guys are doing. And I've had a decent amount of success in there. Like, my business is 100% inbound. Like, I get to do fun stuff like this and, like, all the things. Mm-hmm. But it's taken 3 years to get there. And I get messages all the time, like, Amelia, you've just blown up overnight. Like, where, you know, how did you do this? And I'm like, I've literally been doing this for 3 years.
Yeah.
And so talk me through that. Like, I would love to understand, first of all, I know you mentioned a minute ago that, you know, COVID's kind of got you out of your shell, but you've definitely had a personal brand before that. So what would you say to someone who's like, oh, I need it all now, or thinks that they deserve it all now?
I mean, this is so cliche in my opinion. It's like everyone if you look at any success story, there's so many documentaries, there's so many books, there's so many things. Everybody that's made it has always said it took them a lot of time. And every day you gotta put in the work, and it's just consistency and hard work, you know? Cliche. But I think
Not sexy, but it works.
the most things that are the things that work are actually not sexy, you know, and it's very important to know that and understand that.
I totally agree. I think I've got the date right. Correct me if I'm wrong. March 2014. You're doing a podcast thing with your host,
co-founder Nick Parks. I want to give him a big shout. He's a great friend of mine. So
you're doing a podcast with Nick. You're teaching creators and freelancers how to make money because you've done it already and you want to give back and all the good things. And Nick goes to you, I've seen this guy. He's going to be doing this talk at whatever university. He's going to be doing this keynote.
Yeah, Columbia University.
Let's go meet this guy. You go to the university. Gary Vee comes on stage. Gary Vaynerchuk comes on stage and says, "Hey, I'm going to talk to you about my book." And you see a CEO on the stage with sneakers and a sweatshirt, and you think, "That's my guy." What happens next?
Yeah, well, it's funny. Again, everyone is like so business and so corporate. I was like a scrappy young kid into hip hop, into, you know, like just like street culture. I've always loved it. And so when I saw Gary walk on stage with sneakers and jeans and a hoodie and like a backward hat, I was like, yo, I fuck with his vibe. And so, you know, I watched that keynote. That's the first interaction, first piece of content of Gary I've ever seen. At the end, I say, like, thank you. Like, he's, like, walking out. I said, thank you, and you did a great job, and that was it. That night, I go home and watch his many keynotes, and he has, like, a few random one-off videos on his YouTube channel. It's funny, I actually, right before this call, I sent him a video from, like, 2013, where he's talking about, like, Instagram video might come out, and Snapchat is coming. So,
wow.
Like, it was really fun that I sent him that. But, yeah, and then I'm like, yo, like, I emailed him that night, and I was like, yo, awesome, like, talk tonight, watched a bunch of your content just now, I would love to make you a free video, and I got nothing back in return. And, I remember, like, the course of, like, weeks go by, I get a freelance job where I make the most money I've ever made, ever. It's like, I made, like, $800 in one day, and to me, that was, like, that's a lot, and even now, I would love that. And I'm like, yo, like, this is cool, like, this is great. It was pouring rain, and I'm ghetto. So I would, like, carry my light, my tripod, everything. I lived in Queens at the time. Brought it through the subway. I looked like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I do the job. It's pouring rain. I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to get in a cab today. Put in perspective, I got in, like, one cab once in my life. Get in the cab, and because of how New York City subways were back in the day, there was no service underground. There was no cell phone service. So I'm in the cab, and that's when Gary tweets, hey, I'm trying out this app called Kick. Because I had service, I downloaded it right away. He might have spent, we just talked about this story again, literally I think last week, Gary and I, on another podcast, and he was like, yeah, I was on that app for like 7 minutes. He didn't even play with the app longer than 7 minutes, ever. And so like, I happened to message him, and he saw it, and I said, hey, I want to make a free video for you. I sent him a 1-minute video of something I'd made before, and he said, yes. And, like, that was the moment that I had my shot, you know?
So if you hadn't been in a cab the second time you've ever taken one, you wouldn't have been online, you wouldn't have seen Gary's tweet, you wouldn't have downloaded the app, you wouldn't have messaged him, he wouldn't have replied. That is right. I'm not woo-woo fluffy, but I believe that's fate, 100%. That was meant to happen. Too.
I often say hard work and serendipity often play a role in success. And
I think always.
I think always. I think, you know, and it's cliche too. Preparation leads to, preparation meets hard work leads to, like, results. Like, it's all the same cliche things. And I think a lot of people are just, A, not patient. And then B, when they reach out to people, they're often asking for something. I didn't want to work for Gary. I just wanted to make a video to have a portfolio piece. Because I knew that he was an entrepreneur. I knew he was a businessman. And honestly, I made the video, and within, like, 3 days, I had, like, 4 jobs. And, like, was starting to do them. And then a month later, he emails me out of the blue and says, hey, do you want to come work for me? Right? I was like, I don't know. I didn't want a job at the time. And then I decided, yeah, you know what? I will. And then that began the journey.
What made you say yes? Because I'm self-employed, obviously, because I run my own business. You were self-employed. I feel like the self-employed are unemployable. So what took
and
you
by
back?
the way, if you, it's funny. We were flying back from Puerto Rico 2 days ago, and Gary didn't have Wi-Fi, so we were talking the whole flight, and a lot of this, I was like, yo, like, he was like, I know your energy is not employable. Like, I know, essentially what he was saying was, you want to go, like, we need to hire people that are not non-employable. But for me, I was in a weird spot. I had just been freelancing for like 4 or 5 years on my own, figuring it out, not making great money, made okay money. My girlfriend at the time, my ex, her aunt was pressuring me to go to business school. I had applied to go to Hunter College. I went through orientation. So I was thinking about going back to college. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to pay for school. Back to our original thought. I didn't want to do that. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I take this job in marketing and business, maybe get some real life experience, learn for a year or two, and then bounce out and have some more knowledge. It was my thought process. So I said yes.
And here you are, how many years later? 8?
7.5, 8 years later, yeah. In July, it'll be 8 years that I'll be there.
You've got to be one of the most long-standing employees for sure. Because like,
One of
I
them,
feel like
there's definitely some OGs. There's like 10, 12 years because, you know, Vayner and Gary's known people for a while now. So I'm so glad I'm not the longest because I think there's a lot of like credit I want to give to like Trouty and Nate, who were like literally Gary's interns at Wine Library that now went to go build Empathy Wines, and like now they sold that to Constellation. They did a good job. There's like a ton of other people in our organization that I like want to give a lot of credit to because it's hard to like be in a job for this long. But again, Gary made such a great environment and, you know, built the family, you know.
it's not entirely related to why I wanted to have this discussion with you, but it'll be interesting to hear from your perspective. Obviously, you've gone from being freelance and working for yourself into an organization. You've stayed for nearly 8 years.
Yeah.
Like, clearly there is more to be offered at or with Gary than there was not with Gary. So how important is culture to you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Gary's built a culture that is unlike anything I've ever seen. People just feel safe, and I think it is your job as a boss and a CEO to make your employees feel safe. And, you know, Gary believes in, like, you know, you don't work, the employees don't work for you, you work for the employees, and I really, really, really see that in how he, like, he has an open door policy. Anytime you want to talk to him, email him. It might take a little minute because of how crazy the schedule is, but you get your meeting, you know? And I think to have access to a CEO, you know, we're nearly 1,800 people right now, global office, so, like, that's a lot of people, that's a lot of responsibility, and I think Gary has handled it very well.
A lot of mortgages, a lot of rent payments, a lot of
and not only that, like, and he said this before, like, you know, even me myself, I was a gutter kid, and then I am building up. Now I'm like making a better salary. I now have a different girlfriend I'm more serious about. I now have an apartment I want to move into. I want to start buying a home eventually down the road. Those are all things where, like, A, not only financially needing support from him, but B, my work ethic is a little bit different. My work-life priorities are a little bit different. COVID changed everything in terms of perspective and, like, what I want to focus on in the next 10 years. So I think and that's just me. And again, we have, like, nearly 1,800 people. That's always going to be always until he dies or the company is no longer there, you know? That's part of it.
Which leads me really nicely into content, because I feel like I don't want to spend a huge amount of time talking about Gary, because I think everyone knows Gary, and I think everyone knows you because of what you've done with and for Gary.
Yeah, it's context though. I don't mind giving context, but yes,
sure.
I agree.
But I want to talk to you.
Yeah,
I want to talk to you about you and learn from you, right? So, content, right? You start doing all these videos with Gary, you start working with Gary, you're building YouTube channels, etc. Why?
Yeah, so, you know, I come in 2014, Gary has keynotes and a bunch of, like, one-off random videos, and he's like, hey, let's find some, like, let's make some shorter clips, let's make some mashups of, like, I've said this, I've said it 4 times, put that together, And then, I'm doing 3 months of that. I'm already getting kind of bored. And then he's like, you know what? Come with me, grab your camera, let's go into this room. We're going to start a show. It's going to be called the Ask Gary Vee Show. Let's find random questions on Twitter. I'm going to answer them. And so we start this show. And what ends up happening is we're filming all these different episodes, and no one's really watching. Like, we don't really have an audience. So I'm chopping up the answers and sending them individually to people to, like, start building the hype. Then, as that show starts to build momentum, Gary, one night, on a Sunday night, Gary's like, yo, I need you to come to my apartment. I need you to come right now because I have something I want to say. Again, it's hard to not talk about Gary because it's so intertwined, but his energy was he was reading a ton of comments that people hated their jobs and didn't want to go to work and all that. So I show up at 7 a.m. at his apartment, film this Monday morning rant, and he's like, fuck you, Monday, you can be a bust, you gotta have perspective, you can die, da-da-da-da. I put that video up within 2 hours on his Facebook page. It doubles from 500,000 to 1 million. And that's when we're like, wait a minute, that's powerful. Then, I'm like really bored, and I'm like, okay, like we're back to the Ask Gary Vee Show, I'm back to editing keynotes. And I was like, Gary, can I follow you around because I want to make a short film, again, like what I did in the beginning, how I got the job, and capture some B-roll to tell the story. And to make it look cool and stuff. So I followed him around for a day or two, and when I'm going through the footage, actually no, the end of day 2 of when I'm following him around, I turned to him, and we're in the meatpacking district in downtown. I'm like, wow, your life is actually kind of interesting. And then we made nothing of that, and like, whatever. Months go by, Casey Neistat starts vlogging every single day. I don't know if anyone knows him, he's like a videographer. He's like kind of the guy that started the daily vlog. And so he would start to really he would film, edit, and produce stories every single day about his life. And I was like, Gary, we need to do this. I would love to do this. He's like, no, I'm not a vlogger. I'm not going to do that. So
it was your idea.
Well, let's go into the story. I never like to take credit because he's ultimately the genius behind everything. But Daily Vee was definitely my idea because I would film random basketball videos at 5 a.m. for him when him and his boy are playing pickup basketball. And one day I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to go follow him around for the rest of the day. I show up at his 8 a.m. meeting, and he's like a little confused. You can go watch it on Daily Vee 1. And we just filmed it, edited it, and he loved it. And then we started putting that out. And then what ended up happening months later after Daily Vee started, we were doing a podcast with Charlamagne the God and Andrew Schultz, who's like a comedian. They had a podcast together called the Brilliant Idiots Podcast. And Gary goes on this rant and tangent about Prince working as a janitor to get studio time. And so I'm like, that sounded awesome. So I cut that clip out and we put that on Facebook. Again, the same thing happened. Ultimate virality for Gary, like insane amount of views, insane amount of growth on his page. And that's when me, him, and Andy all looked at each other and said, wait a minute, Daily Vee is not about the vlog for us, it's about the micro content that comes from it. And so then we just started saying, you know what, you need to film all the time, and then just cut clips and put out clips, and that's where the Gary Vee brand really, really, really started to change and explode,
I love that so much because my thought process is really similar. So one of the reasons I do this podcast, aside from it's a great excuse to speak to people like you, is that it's exactly that, right? I have now a cornerstone piece of content that I can create once and distribute 1,000 times. I can put these clips, I could transcribe it, turn it into text posts, turn them into tweets, turn them into whatever. I can screenshot the tweets and then put them on Instagram and
100%.
all the things. Like
the volume model.
Yeah, right? But why would you not do it any other way? If we look at like manufacturing, we look at every other industry, you create a product once, you sell it 1,000 times. It's exactly the same thing.
Yep.
So what advice would you give to people? Because we're speaking, both of us, from a place we have teams, right?
Yeah.
So although I create my content myself, my team distribute it for me. Like, etc. We have a video editor who is so devastated he couldn't be here. He's on a flight right now, and he was like, "Please tell me how it goes." He's such a fan. He was like, "Oh, I'm like fucking bummed. Like it's the only one that he would have loved to have come. Well, he would have come to. He comes to.
Well, why don't we set up like a 5-minute FaceTime and I'll call him one day. Okay.
He would love that, I'm sure.
Cool.
He's like a super big fan. A lot of how he does stuff, he's learned from watching how you guys have done stuff, and he's like you. He's 100% self-taught. You learn everything on YouTube. Like he's fucking awesome. So shout out to Sam because he's going to be editing all this later. He's gonna be like so awkward now. He's gonna be like, "Why did you bring me up?"
No, Sam is nice. He cares about you. It's a nice thing.
But I have a team. You know, you're part of a team. You now have a team with you. If you're listening,
did you have a team in the beginning?
No. I only. Well, this is where I'm going with this.
I know.
So I only just had my team started posting my content like 3 months ago.
Okay.
So up until this point, up until a community of 110,000 people, I've never. And no one's done anything for me. It's all been me, right?
Got it.
Which leads me nicely onto the question of, you don't have a team, you don't have a video editor, you don't have someone to follow you around. How are you creating content? How are you building your personal brand at the scale that you need to be building it at in order to make an impact?
Yeah, I think, what you said earlier was, like, you have one piece of staple content that you can pull stuff from, right? And now, listen, like, a lot of people don't want to do video. A lot of people don't want to do audio. You can write a 10,000-word article and still do the same thing that we're talking about. You can write a 10,000 thoughtful white paper article about a thing once a month, and then you can pull micro quotes from that. You can have someone else record it as an audio podcast and put it up. There are so many ways to manipulate content and turn what you think is one thing into 100. And so I often encourage people, whether that be a long-form podcast, a long-form article, or a long-form video, whatever that is, have one piece of content that's your staple. Or you can do what a lot of TikTokers and influencers do on social media right now, which is just put out a small piece of content once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day around different topics and different things that you enjoy,
I love that advice so much, and actually, it's something that we always tell people. So, the question I get all the time is like, how do you do this? And the answer I always give to people is like you. Some people don't want to do video, right? But I always say, like, buddy up with someone, find a friend, find a colleague, find a whatever who wants to do this too. Yep. Both of you write down a list of like your 10 to 20 most frequently asked questions, and then swap. Jump on Zoom, record it, boom. You've got a recording that you can chop up into micro content. You can transcribe it, turning it into text posts for like LinkedIn or whatever. It's like the most idiot proof. And hey, like we can all have access to Fiverr. It costs you $100 to give a piece of long form video to someone to chop up into tiny things. And I appreciate this comes from a place of privilege, but I really do think this excuse of like I don't have time, I don't have like ideas,
the resources or the ideas or whatever. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you are at a place of privilege in terms of like you've always wanted to communicate yourself. A lot of people don't, and so sometimes I often say maybe even just interviewing somebody else, kind of like what you're doing. You're not the personal brand, you're just being the platform for somebody else. Or a lot of brands have been built off of curation, like Kith and a lot of these hypebeasts. And all these different like social media things that have now become monsters over years of like putting out content, and they start off curating. They're just curators of things that they enjoyed, and so that's another approach as well.
I call those a research expert, where you just bring everything that people want to know about that particular topic to one place, so people can come to you instead of going to lots of different places. It's super, super, super valuable advice. I actually think. A lot of people think that good content needs to be original content or new content, but it doesn't need to be original. It doesn't even need to be quote unquote smart to be valuable, because what seems really obvious to you might be gold to someone else.
Well, that's what I was gonna say too. Like a lot of people think that their opinions or their ideas aren't valid because they don't have enough experience. This is where Gary and I and the team put out a big piece of content back in the day called Document, Don't Create. I think a lot more people, if you feel pressure that you don't have ideas or you don't think about things in ways that like creative people do, what you said, which is right, finding a partner who does think that way, who can help, be that voice, and maybe you're just the operator behind the scenes, or just trying to document things more often. Like, I think way too many people are one-dimensional on Instagram and social, and I think a lot, like, during COVID, I posted on my feed a plate of tomatoes, and it was the worst performing thing from a numbers standpoint, but then I had, like, 5 conversations around healthy eating during COVID in my DMs, and to me that was valuable. I find social the place where you can have the conversation you want to have. And I
Love
think
that.
too many people use it as a front, like, hey, look what I'm doing, hey, look at my life, hey, da da da, versus conversation. And like you said in the beginning, it's a two-way street, right? Like any
Yeah.
relationship.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because, like, so for context, I like Instagram the least of all the social media platforms, because I think Instagram has become a bit like, if we look back at traditional advertising and marketing, right? It was like, we are going to talk at you. Like, that's how we marketed. We were like, here's a billboard, here's a TV ad, buy our stuff. Like, that was how we marketed. And as time has gone on, we've realized actually that what we should be doing is moving into communities and influencing them from within them, right? And that's how social media came about. It's how why influencer marketing exists, like
100%.
all the things, right? But the issue I have with Instagram, and I love that you've brought Instagram up, and I love that you've had that conversation, because it's kind of like made me think a little bit. But the reason I don't like Instagram is I feel like it's actually reverted back to billboard. Like, here's a picture of me in my car. Here is a picture of me on my thing. Here's a picture of me. And the issue...
Yeah, I would say to that quickly is that, you know, Instagram is not Instagram, it's people. People are wildly one-dimensional and often are insecure, which is why they need to post the thing of look at me, because they need more attention and validation. And so, before we start blaming the platform, like Elon and doing Twitter, and, you know, tomorrow you're going to say TikTok or podcasting, so me, because they make, you know, like, everything is going to be that. It's more just about overall humans are insecure and need validation.
I love that you've said that, because where I was going with that point was, I got to a point in February last year where I deleted Instagram, right? Which is crazy for someone that runs a personal brand, but a branding agency. But what I realized was I was using it as a source of validation, right? I was following people that weren't adding anything to my life. If anything, they were making it worse.
Exactly right.
And so I took a break from the platform. And now when I'm on Instagram, I have some of the most meaningful conversations with people, because it's really accessible. Like, it's quite difficult to have conversations on LinkedIn because the inbox is a fucking shit show.
I hate
Like, that needs a whole podcast in itself about how bad LinkedIn's inbox is. TikTok is really difficult to communicate because you can only send, you know, like the video situation. And so what ends up happening is people that want to speak to me and they found me on TikTok or LinkedIn, as they come and find me on Instagram, we have these really fucking cool conversations, right? On Instagram. And so what I started realizing was that basically regardless of where I put the content, whether it be Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever, is social media is not it's not part of your, like, a source of validation for your personality. It's just a distribution channel, right, for it. So if you're seeking validation from one of those channels, you are always going to be fucking miserable.
Well,
so
and that's
I'm glad you brought that up.
People seek validation in the watches they buy and the clothes they buy and everything. Like, we're communicative animals, and so I think a lot of times people get that confused with, oh wait, it's a platform. Oh no, you can unfollow anybody you want to unfollow and not see. You don't have to talk to anybody you don't want to talk to. It makes it very easy. People are not accountable for their actions. But another point I'll say is, I actually kind of like Instagram the most. Oh, I love Twitter the best. That's my favorite. Least pressure, just easy, lightweight. You can kind of
shower thoughts
a lot. You can shower thoughts. You can post 100 times a day. No one's gonna get annoyed. But I do like Instagram more than even texting. Like, I think texting is dumb. I really think having text messages in conversations with other people is dumb because you have no context. I love Instagram because I can see, what you're up to recently. You've either posted something in your feed or in your stories, or I just have your picture and all the information I need to be able to have a quick grasp of who you are again and understand where you are in your life. You know, I think Instagram DMs are probably the best way of communication in 2022.
And also the way that you can, like, filter them too, with, like, primary, general, 100%. Hidden. Like, I mean, LinkedIn needs to take a leaf out of Instagram's work, as far as I'm concerned.
You really hate LinkedIn.
No, I love. I love LinkedIn. I hate the DMs.
Like once a month. Yeah, I pop in like once a month on LinkedIn. I'm like, yo, and then I'm out. You know, like
I'll tell you why I love LinkedIn, because I love video, right? Like video I find really easy. Images I find hard because I feel awkward. I'm not really a picture kind of girl. It's not my vibe. But I love communicating, and copywriting for me is really fluid. Like I always say to people, like, if you want to get something out fast, because you and I know this, but some other people might not know, when there's something weird that happens when you come to write something where your brain goes, I have to be writing a thank you letter to the Queen. And when people read that copy, they read it as if that's what you're writing, and it's fucking awful. Whereas if you dictate your thoughts into your phone, or dictate your thoughts into the app for it to be written, you write how you speak, which is far more converting, right? So whenever I do a tweet or whenever I do a LinkedIn post, I just dictate it, right? So it's written how I speak.
Wow, that's fascinating. I never thought about that before. That's cool.
Well, it's right to how you speak, right? But I think that's part of why I've managed to build a decent following quite quickly, and that it's because it's kind of cutting through the noise. It's someone's coming to a platform where typically it's like, I'm excited to announce that I've joined the corporation Acme Inc. Whereas I'm like, hey guys, like, what about this? Like, come on, no bad grammar, terrible spelling, like full stops, like emojis, like, it sort of makes sense.
By the way, I think that's a great approach. I think, if you don't like to sit and write, like, you should use the dictate tool. I think that's phenomenal advice.
Well, I'm also
it's
very
funny,
lazy.
even Gary, he never sits down and writes articles. He just talks, and then we transcribe it into an article, which is probably why what you said actually does help you communicate in a different way.
Yeah, because people read stuff as if it's being said to them, right? 100%. So why would you not want to do that? So I want to segue a little bit away from personal branding stuff, and I'd love to talk to you about Made By, your I guess your side hustle, right?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
First of all, how did it start? How did it start? Where did it start? And also, why do you think having a side hustle is so important when you're full-time employed as well?
Great question. It's funny. I didn't know you were going to ask me this, but I'm currently wearing one of my first hoodies I ever made. My buddy, I mean, I was on Twitter one day, and, for some reason I just wanted to make a hoodie, so I tweeted out, hey, can anybody help me make a hoodie? Just trying to find somebody that would want to do it with me, and this guy, Syed, big shout out to him from Wildhood, reached out and said, hey, I'll make it for you for free, and so, essentially, I started slapping quotes, motivational quotes, on hoodies. My first one was go do, and on the bottom right it said go dream. And I thought, like, people always talk about, go dream, and at the bottom it said go do. In the beginning, you always think about your dreams. You always think about the things that you aspire to do. Well, a lot of people forget about the go do. And so that was like kind of my first one. I made it in my Instagram stories, and I sent it to him, like, hey, please make this. He made it, and people loved it. People loved, like, the quote, they loved the message, the quality was great. And so then this is my second one, hard work forever pays. And then, I put out 2 or 3 more, and I realized, wait a minute, I started to become really into streetwear and culture like that. And so I was like, I have no design school experience, no fashion school experience, nothing. So literally October, I'm like sitting there like, yo, you're full of shit. You're just slapping quotes on hoodies. You need to like change your shit up. So essentially I was like, okay, what's my brand name? What's the thing I want to do? Who am I? What do I like? And my core is making. I love making. So, it's funny. I was looking at, I was talking about like how a lot of things were made in China. And I thought about, if you look at labels, it says made in China. And then I thought, wait a minute, why don't I just make it made by China? And then like made by blank. And then I was like, wait, I want to do collaboration. So eventually I want to do like made by Louis Vuitton, made by Pepsi, made by BMW. I wanted a container where I can just do what I love doing. Whether that be a hoodie, whether that be a pair of sunglasses or an iPhone case or sneakers or pants or anything. Essentially, I wanted freedom. And so I'm really happy with that name. And now I just want to build a brand. I think over the next 10, 12 years, I'll have something to be proud of, and I'm excited about it. Now, to answer the second part of your question, side hustle, listen, I don't think everybody should have a side hustle, and I don't think everybody wants to have a side hustle. for the people that do, because you're either extra creative or you feel like you're in a box and you can't put out your expressive thoughts in the box that you're in, it's just a good outlet for yourself. Like, I don't like watching sports. That's not my thing. I like sitting on my computer and photoshopping 5 t-shirts, though, while, like, Friends or Seinfeld is on in the background. I love that. I like editing videos, but when you edit videos, you gotta be locked in, focused. So, like, for me, made by just like express my other passions outside of me, the personal brand, and Gary and my job.
And do you think starting the business has helped you in your job too?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing, and I'm kind of the same way I was about my own personal brand. I don't do it during the work hours. I do it, like, if I'm on a flight, or if I'm, like, on Saturdays, I'll grab my laptop and go design something, or I'll wake up earlier and design for, like, 5 or 10 minutes. I think that's just, it's a good mental health thing for me, honestly. It allows me to just focus on something that's not super important, but ultimately will lead to probably where I'll get a lot of happiness in the next 10 years.
I love that so much, because as an employee, so not obviously, but I employ 9 people, and of those 9 people,
Congrats,
they are, thank you. It makes me feel so awkward when people say stuff like that, so we'll just skim past.
This whole podcast can't be about me either, so, you gotta make you blush a little bit.
Just squirm a little bit. But at least 5 of them have got side hustles, right? Whether it be like freelancing, doing stuff, or like painting. Someone else does like graphic design stuff, and it's all on the side. And it's so funny because when they first started working with me, they were like, "Oh, like I didn't really know how to ask you, but like, is it okay if I still do my other thing?" And I was like, "Of course it's fucking okay. Like, like I'm not your keeper. Like, you do what you need to do. As long as you're not selling the same services we're selling, you could do whatever you want."
100%.
Because 2 things: 1, it's going to make you happy. 2, or 3 things: it's going to make you money, which is going to add to your lifestyle and make you a more whole human being. But number 3, you're going to learn stuff, whether that job has that hustle has anything to do with your job or not. You're going to learn stuff in that side hustle that you can apply to your job with me, that's going to make my business better and more prosperous. So why would I want to stop people doing that?
It's definitely a way of keeping your tools sharp. Like, I always it's good. You want to encourage your employees to do that, because ultimately they might learn something on their own thing, and like that might be the smart. Or wait a minute, we got to come back and I got to do that for Amelia's thing, because that will make a lot of sense. Yeah. It's a great way to. It's college, it's school, it's education, it's continually learning and evolving.
Yeah, and I just think the thought process where anyone would go, "No, you can't do that," to me is just dumb. But I'm conscious of time, and I know you've been giving me so much already.
I have a meeting in like 2 minutes, so I gotta like.
Okay, I did have 2 more questions, but I'll just skip straight to one, because I ask this question to every single guest that comes on this podcast, and it's the final kind of wrap up of the question, which is, I could talk to you for hours, but we'll have to end it.
We can do a part 2. We can do a part 2.
We'll do a part 2. I'll tell you what, I'm coming out to the States in the summer, so we can come do it in person. If you could go back to 21-year-old D-Rock, what are the 3 things that you would tell yourself?
Yeah, so 21-year-old me, I would say, really don't look for outside validation. Like, you're good enough, you're fine, people will like you. 2, don't try too hard. Like, I'm a giver naturally, so I would always overgive, and in that I didn't give myself enough self-love. And then honestly, the 3rd one's super personal, but I'll tell you, it's I should have broke up with my girlfriend a lot sooner, and that's just me being young and inexperienced, and I just having the self-awareness to do that.
I also think you have to go through some shit like that to get the self-awareness to do that.
100%.
This has been incredible. Thank you so, so much. I'm honored that you agreed, and thank you so much for giving up your time. And yeah, I appreciate it. And I will hold you to that part 2 for sure.
I'm humbled, and I can't wait. When you come back to New York, let me know.
Thank you so, so much.